Now, last year, activist shareholder Carl Icahn, he pushed Motorola to spin off its mobile division. And now Google's purchase of Motorola Mobility could earn the billionaire another $600 million. Carl Icahn joining us on the phone right now. Carl, good to have you back on Street Smart. Safe to say you're pretty happy how this deal has played out with Google buying Motorola Mobility.
Yes, it worked out pretty well, yes.
Hey, I'm just curious. I mean, when did you get involved? I mean, were you involved in brokering the talks with Google at all?
Well, I was involved somewhat. We have representation on the board, but I certainly, over the last 2-3 years, we've been pretty active in the company, and I think it shows how activism works. And we helped to get the company separated. The board acted very responsibly, and obviously that helped quite a bit. I don't think it could have happened without that. And we helped bring Sanjay Rai in, who did a great job as co-CEO running the Motorola Mobility.
No, your letter was very complimentary. You're very happy in terms of how they played it out. But let me just clarify. So did you bring Google in? I mean, did you actually bring them in and say, hey, guys, this is a great combination for you?
No, I did not do that. I as you know, wrote a letter about, about 3-4 weeks ago saying that the company should look at every strategic alternative possible. But I did not bring Google in.
Carl, let me ask you, a lot of people have been saying this is a defensive play because they need the patents, and that makes sense. They're obviously worth a pretty penny, but does Google really need the hardware side of Motorola Mobile? Do they need to be making phones and set-top boxes?
Let me speak to that. I think this is a win-win for both companies. I think Google, it did not pay $12 billion because you have in the company, well, they paid $12 billion, but there's $3.5 billion in cash in the company. There's a set-top box business that makes $2.5 billion that could be sold, I guess, if they wanted to, and so that's $6 billion right there. I think the operating company, we're doing 25 to 30 million smartphones next year. Being that said, it's a very difficult business, an operating business, unless you have Google's kind of capital, and I'm not sure what Google is going to do with it, but the patent portfolio, in my way of thinking, is probably worth more than Nortel's. So it seems Google got the operating company almost for nothing. Being that said, I'm very happy with the deal. I mean, the real play here, and I really think in making money when you do risk-reward, you sort of go against others' feelings. And a couple of years ago, you could have bought all of Motorola, both companies, Motorola Solutions and Mobility, you could have bought it for $3 or $4 a share. Today, that's up to $11, and at $3 or $3.5 or $4, there was absolutely, in my mind, almost zero risk. So that is the thing. And today, even at 10.5 or 11, I think Motorola Solutions is extremely cheap. I mean, if you look at Motorola Solutions with the income they have and insecurity across the country and the world, again, it's almost a no-brainer, in my opinion. So, I mean, you still have that value there. And so I think the activism certainly helped, but you have to look at value, too. So,
hey, Carl, we've been talking a lot about the premium. It's about a 73% premium compared with Motorola's 20-day trading average price before today. So pretty hefty by a lot of people's measures. But I'm just curious if Motorola spoke with any other suitors to see if, indeed, the price was adequate here.
Oh, I think they did. We have representation on the board. I am not going to go into what happened at the board level. I think you'd have to ask them that. But I would be, I can't speak for what the board did, but I'm sure I would believe they looked at everything. Yeah. And I think this is a pretty hefty premium and a very good price. And I'm certainly, as I said in my press release, quite happy with it. Being that said, I think it's a win-win.
Mr. Icahn, this is Tobias Lefkovich at Citigroup. Is it only well-capitalized companies that can really get into the M&A environment today? Are we starting to see some stress in the high-yield market for other players to come in?
Look, I think there are great opportunities. I think the problem you have in the country, one of the problems, is you don't really have good corporate governance in this country. And therefore, we have trouble competing. There are some very well-run companies, some very poorly run companies, and I think if you didn't have all these poison pills and these staggered boards, more people than myself could get into this activism, and I think you'd see more, more combinations, which would make our companies certainly more adept at competing, and again. The risk of being modest, this Motorola wouldn't have taken place if we hadn't got it separated and we hadn't done it. And but it's very hard to win a proxy fight. We're in one now with coming up this week with Forest Labs, and heck, that company, I've said it publicly, has been a badly run company. And yet it's still hard to win a proxy fight.
Hey, Carl, and I want to ask you about Forest Labs, but I have one more question about this deal in Motorola. I mean, are you close to breaking even on your investment completely in Motorola at this point? I think the initial one was at what, about...
Let me say this. I don't go into the numbers, but obviously in 2008, we bought the stock at way too high of a price. They had 10 operating systems, and we didn't quite understand how bad that mobility business was, and you got hit by you got hit by '08, so we paid high. But I will say, if you look at what I've done or did, we bought that stock all the way down to 3. We bought a great deal of stock at 3. I mean, we had over at the end on the old stock, we had around I try to remember 250 million shares. So and we kept every share of it. In the last year, we kept every share and maybe bought more. I can't remember. So obviously we averaged it down, and we're very pleased with the results. That's what I'll say. At one point, I mean, I think I was the only buyer around for a week at a time.
I think you may be right. Hey, you brought up Forest Labs. You guys have a meeting coming up. It's the day scheduled for the Forest Labs board election. You're looking to get 4 seats on that board. Any indication that you'll get those seats at this point?
Well, we certainly hope we're going to prevail. It's tough. It's a tough proxy fights are tough today, and they make them tough because of all the regulations as far as going in and buying stock and being able to be there. But obviously Motorola we got on the board. Many other companies we've got on the board, and I think we did a great job for all shareholders. I mean, if you look at all these companies we've been involved with, and I really do believe that one of the problems, if we really wanted to get our country more productive, would be to do much more to help other guys do it. I mean, I can afford to do it, and I can afford to spend the great fees, the money in a proxy fight and other things, but other people should be doing this, and it's a sad commentary.
Well, I have one last question. I think I've got time for Clorox. Carl, what's next for Clorox? I mean, the board is saying, your bid is incredible. What do you do? You've already upped it once. What do we do? What do you do from here?
Look, I've said before, I think Forest Lab, really, if you look at Forest Lab, in the last 7 years, that stock is down in half. And the CEO has taken a lot of money out, and I think it's been badly run. I don't put Clorox in that category. I do feel that that they should have allowed my bid to go out to shareholders. But being that said, obviously we're talking to them, and I can't really go into more than that.
All right. We're going to leave it on that note. Carl, very gracious for giving us so much time, and we do appreciate it. Carl Icahn joining us on the phone, and our thanks to Tobias Lefkovich, joining Matt there down at the New York Stock Exchange.